a really quick tutorial about Live's templating system and how to set up default tracks. You may or may not be aware of the fact that tracks themselves can be saved as defaults. For example, on this track here, we have a bunch of kick drums loaded into a drum rack, and if I click on the header and I go down to save as default MIDI track and overwrite the one that's already there, the next time I create a MIDI track it should create one that looks exactly the same as this. So yeah, and it has done, minus the clip of course, but it has created the track. It doesn't create all the clips with it. The same thing for audio tracks. If I create a default audio track, same deal, overwrite it. Next time I create an audio track, you'll see that it has the same channel strip on it that I had before. This again is another thing. It's for me, it's a default for me. I use this my channel strip that I built out of Ableton plugins and just assigned a few macros, made a few nice colors, and just basically tried to set it up so it's as transparent as possible. So when you stick it on a channel, you don't really hear it until you start fiddling around with some of the settings. It's got a basic EQ in there, just so you can just push a little bit more mid, or you can push a little bit more bass into a track, and you obviously and a bass cut. Very simple stuff. Basic filter. You can add a bit of drive to the filter. This turns the overdrive on, and you can you can adjust the amount of overdrive, threshold for the compressor, and mid and side and gain from the utility plugin. So that's my channel strip, which I use on pretty much everything. So the template that I've got here this is roughly what I use for Ableton Live. Also, I've got all my MIDI tracks here. These are all external instruments that I've got in the studio. I've got them all inside this group called MIDI, because sometimes I do stuff with just VSTs, sometimes it's all in audio, sometimes I'm using external. I tend to use my external stuff quite often, so that's why I've set it all up. Each track has been set up with its respective MIDI port and its respective MIDI channel, so we know exactly where each one is going to, because it's really easy to forget, and I don't like having to go around the studio and plug stuff in, because you just want to get on with it, don't you? So this is the Pro 1, for example, and this is the 101. So we've got a bunch of synths. The Moog is USB, and the JP08, that's USB 2. The Neutron is plugged into a Korg SQ1 at the moment, so that's kind of not really doing anything. That's kind of doing its own thing. And yeah, other bits and bobs in the studio, the Nord and the Virus, which is down the shop getting repaired at the moment. Let's just hope that is still going to be okay and it's going to come back. I really hope so. So there you go, that's my basic kind of studio setup, give or take. Then we've got a few effects tracks here. I don't ever put I don't mean ever, but I tend not to put overdrive, compression and other kind of processing effects on my auxiliary returns. You can see that they are actually here in this channel strip, but these effects are processing the signal from a reverb, and the reverb is set to 100% wet, you see. So I tend to use the sends and returns to add reverb, delay, chorus, flange, filter, those kind of effects to my tracks. It just gives me really quick access to send a sound through a reverb or through a delay, just really quickly. Sometimes those settings stay all the way through to the final mix, and sometimes I just use them as a quick kind of example, so I can kind of get an idea of where I'm going, and then I might tighten things up later on as I'm going along. So yeah, with everything there, it's very very quick for me to start a track. And if I want to start if I start writing, I can just start straight away, put some notes into the Pro One, and just push the fader up here in the studio, and off you go. And that is basically it. So now this is all set up, looking nice, and I've got some all my favorite effects and all my favorite bits of kit in the studio, all kind of set up with all their right MIDI channels. I've also sorted out the first few audio channels have all got input set up to the equipment that I tend to use most of the time, and I've got a few drums in some drum racks, so I've got a couple of little riffs written in some clips, and that's basically it. Off we go, we're ready to go. So that's it. That's the beginning of some track. Who knows what that'll turn into. The last thing to do is really to just save the whole thing as a template. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call this Template 2. Now, to make this the default template, so it loads every single time I load up live, you can just right click on it and you set it as the default template. And that is it. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.